And the other thing I want to talk about in terms of choice is adaptive reuse, because we're now we're actually standing in a wonderful adaptive reuse retrofit project.
We have been striving hard to constantly make our buildings more climate responsive by adapting vernacular methods and reinterpreting them through a contemporary eye.
But wherever we can, we try and be sustainable in our choices. So I think the choices are very important. And as architects, interior designers, we've got a barrage of kind of objects and product to choose from.
Wives are jealous that we are married then.
Curated the exhibition, and the exhibition was called What's Your Story?
Some of the facets or importance facets of sustainable design that we adapt and follow are abundance of sun, but we have to intelligently work with it. In the Indian subcontinent, we get our breezes from the southwest to the northeast and from the northeast to the southwest. Rain, water, very essential. We have kind of made a mandate in all our projects to harvest the water.
And I think the next decade as architects, we've got to look at retrofitting, recycling, adapting, and kind of giving a building another chance, another life.
Hi everyone. Thank you Bharat and the team at Architects Diary for inviting us to share our work at this forum. It's indeed a pleasure to be here today. This is our studio. I'm Amaresh Anand.
Yeah, I'm Sandeep Khosla, and we're co-founders of Khosla Anand. Pleasure to be here.
So, as contextualists, our design is driven by the site, the climate, and the culture of the place. We often use local materials and local methods sometimes and use them in interesting ways. Today, we are specifically going to be talking about the methodology that we adapt in our design to make our buildings more efficient, comfortable, sustainable, and climate sensitive. Over the many decades of our practice, we have been striving hard to constantly make our buildings more climate responsive by adapting vernacular methods and reinterpreting them through a contemporary eye. So some of the facets or importance facets of sustainable design that we adapt and follow are sunlight, air, movement, rain, water harvesting, recycle, storage, choices that we make, and reuse or adaptive reuse of the buildings itself. In India, we have abundance of sun, but we have to intelligently work with it. While we have to protect our buildings from the harsh sunlight, we also need to allow the daylight into our buildings. In our project Retreat in the Sahyadris, which was a second home built overlooking the Pavna Lake in Maharashtra, we conceived this as a single-level pavilion with large overhangs on the south and the west of the building to protect from the harsh elements. However, we realized in doing so, the internal spaces were becoming dark. So we devised a series of these lyrical skylights pointing towards the north and allowing for the north light to gently dabble in and illuminate softly the interior spaces through the day. The skylights themselves were referencing the mountainscapes around, and yeah. In our other project, Gulmohar Clubhouse, which was again built in Raipur, known for its fierce heat and hot summers, we devised large overhangs of sloping roofs, pergolas, sunscreened through louvered wooden screens, and sometimes used even foliage to protect the interior spaces from the harsh sun. We then devised skylights which were strategically sized and placed to allow for dabble light coming into the internal spaces again. In the Arts and Media Center at Doon School, we devised a north light skylight all along the length of the building. This allowed for the internal galleries and studios to be bathed with natural diffused anti-glare light from the north, and thereby eliminating the use of bulbs or lights during the day. Abhikram was a house that we designed in Ahmedabad, and as you know, Ahmedabad's fierce summer heat was something that we had to combat. And daytime temperatures here averages between 45 to 47 degrees during the day. So we had to think of passive design strategies to keep the building cool. We thought there was no point in allowing the heat to penetrate and then trying to cool it using vast amounts of energy. So we devised a series of elements like horizontal pergolas, the large overhangs, vertical louvers, and set our verandas deep enough to keep all of the internal spaces protected from the harsh light. And these pergolas not only kind of broke the sun and prevented the sun from hitting the building, but also created this lovely shadows and patterns on the facade through the day. And these shadows were also dynamic and quite dramatic as the sun moved from east to the west. The house, in a way, is structured to showcase the path or the trajectory of the sun through the day and witnesses an ever-changing play of sciography on the surface throughout the day. Air. As you know, in the Indian subcontinent, we get our breezes from the southwest to the northeast and from the northeast to the southwest. In Cliff House, another holiday home that we designed perched on a cliff about 200 feet above the Arabian Sea, we devised a series of these windows which was sliding, folding, and could also have these louvers which operated vertically for allowing the breezes then to modulate through the internal spaces. This allowed us to keep the internal spaces cool all through the year, Even during monsoons, the louvers were operated to keep the rains away but let the breezes in. This building is now about 15 years old, and only about a couple of years ago did the clients put in ACs in the rooms. In the school DPS Kindergarten, which was in Bangalore on the outskirts, we used terracotta, local terracotta Jali as an outer skin, which not only kind of gave the building a distinct character, but also allowed for the breezes to blow through the classrooms. We simply took 2 modules of readily available terracotta Jali, mixed them up to create an interesting pattern, and these walls then protected the interior spaces from the harsh sun while allowing the breezes to flow through the classrooms, and also allowed for exterior views while creating a lovely play of light and shadow. We designed the classrooms around the courtyards. These courtyards created a stack effect where the hot air was rising up, creating a negative pressure in the courtyard, which then sucked in the exterior air from the outside through the Jali walls flanking on either side of the classrooms. This allowed the classrooms to be cool through the day. In the current time when all the schools are getting a lot of air conditioning, we attempted a climate sensitive institution. Rain, water, very essential. We have kind of made a mandate in all our projects to harvest the water, and we do it in 2 different methods that we follow. We collect the rainwater from the roofs via the chains, downtake pipes, channel them through the recharge pits to recharge the groundwater, and sometimes we even store them. These chains have become a very distinct character and a detail in our architecture now. In this home, which was an estate home built on a 150-acre coffee estate in Wayanad, we used the rainwater from the roofs and collected them in these large tanks, open tanks rather, which became these lovely water bodies in the landscape feature. The stored water in the lean seasons is used for domestic purpose as well as for gardening. Sometimes, whenever possible, we collect and bifurcate the grey water from the shower and the wash basins, channel them through the baffle tanks, and then through a reed belt. The reeds remove the toxins, and then the filtered water is then stored in storage tanks. And this again is used for gardening, and it's supposed to be very good for the plants.
So, Amresh has talked about passive design strategies, which really combat climate. But that's not the only way I think we can be sustainable. We're doing all kinds of projects. We're doing climate sensitive architecture, but we're also doing interior projects across the country. Sometimes it's a challenge, but wherever we can, we try and be sustainable in our choices. So I think the choices are very important. And as architects, interior designers, we are constantly we've got a barrage of kind of objects and product to choose from. And sometimes the choices that we make can be, can really kind of play a very important role in sustainability. So I'm going to go back to 2019, where, Khosla Associates and TSK Design at that time did an exhibition for India Design ID in Delhi. And Tanya Singh Khosla, graphic designer, and myself, working as an interior designer and architect, curated the exhibition. And the exhibition was called What's Your Story? So it's really about objects that we curated, about 30 objects from around the country, from design studios, mostly working with craft. And we asked that very important question, what is the story? Is there a compelling story to this object? And does it have a reason to exist in an age where, we've got a depleting planet and a climate crisis? Do these objects bring any value to our already cluttered lives? So are they in any way kind of providing livelihood or sustainability to the communities that make these objects? What is the life cycle of these objects? So these are kind of important questions that we were pondering. And so we had, of course, we had kind of well-established designers like Rushad, Gunjan, and Vikram Goyal and all in this exhibition, but also younger studios. There was a studio called Sienna in Kolkata working with potters in Shantiniketan in a very sustainable way. A textile house called Neela House in Jaipur working with organic indigo dye. And the entire, actually the entire show was, there were 6 sections, and there were these sculptural walls that kind of interacted with each other, and the facade of all these walls were clad in a cast stone tile, a cast stone from waste quarry dust. So there was a company in Gujarat called Artemis. They supplied the tiles to us, and the whole idea was that after the exhibition, the tiles could be dismantled and reused. And it was more like a demonstrator. So that was what was this, but this was just pre-COVID, and it really got us thinking about the choice we have now in India with, it's not only handcrafted, it's machine made, we've got great processes in our factories, etc., etc. So 2 years later, we were commissioned to do this hotel in JP Nagar in Bangalore, and those of you who are from Bangalore can go and see it. And some of the lessons from What's Your Story, kind of exploring design studios across the country, played into this hotel. Because the clients who came to us and said, we want an India modern sensibility. That's a very cliched kind of thing now. And we said, what does it really mean to be India modern today? So we kind of did a deep dive into design studios across the length and breadth of the country, working with craft in a meaningful and responsible way. And we said, let's showcase them. Anyone who comes into the lobby can find out where these objects are from. And so we started kind of looking further at all the kind of talent across the length and breadth of the country. There was, bone inlay from Jodhpur, paper mache from Kashmir. There was, textiles and cane from Nagaland. There was carpets from Mirzapur, marquetry from Mysore, wood marquetry from Mysore, and we had, stuff from Channapatna. There's a table made with Vyam Collective. We did these lovely collaborations of a table, with Chanapatna legs and this carpet, which was done by TSK Design, which references the flower market, the K.R. flower market in an abstracted, a top-down view of that. So we had a lot of fun on this project, and but the entire fit-out of the hotel, this was always to prove to the clients, because they said, we want to get everything from China. And we said, no, there are other ways to do it. So the fit-out of the lobby, all the public spaces, and the 160 rooms was done in a workshop within a 5-kilometer radius of the site. And I think this was a way of making a choice to be sustainable. So these were the rooms and some of the common spaces. And there's just a very, very short kind of walkthrough of the lobby space. SR, I think you worked on this, huh? And the other thing I want to talk about in terms of choice is adaptive reuse, because we're actually standing in a wonderful adaptive reuse retrofit project. And these are the kind of inspiring projects that, what is our first reaction to any job is to tear something down and rebuild. And I think the next decade as architects, we've got to look at retrofitting, recycling, adapting, and kind of giving a building another chance, another life. And that's what, Sabha is a great example. I'll talk about a really favorite building of ours, the Tract and Book Society building, which we renovated actually from 1996 to 2018, 5 or 6 times. So this is a lovely building. This is a beautiful, image from T.P. Issar's book, The City Beautiful. And this was the building as it stood in 1912. You can see a horse-drawn carriage and a person and a dog kind of walking in the middle of the road, unimaginable today. And, in 1912 to 1945, it was home to the Salvation Army. It's got a great history. 1945, it became a book society selling Christian books. And there's a story of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip coming in 1961 and being presented a Hindi Bible. And then in 1996, we created this, I don't know who all are there from that time, 180 proof this was a rocking bar with like 800 people a night. It kind of defined the nightlife of Bangalore. And this kind of was there in 1996. I think this was one of the first adaptive reuse projects in the city. And then in 2001, we created on one half of the building a barista, which was it was their 100th store, and they asked us to do that. And previously, it was a HMV music store, which was selling, musical instruments and albums, LPs. And then finally, in 2008, we created Hard Rock Cafe, and we combined both the halves of the building and created this 9,000 square foot space. It still stands at Hard Rock. And in 2018, we did the latest renovation. So you can see how this building actually moved from a tea house in 1912 to Salvation Army place for them, and then a music store and a coffee house, and then it became a place for music again. But, you know, renovated about 6, 7 times, and I think for another 100 years or 200 years, this building will keep getting recycled, I feel. Why? It's not because there is a Heritage Act in place. It's just that organically we restored this building because there was good FSI. It was, you know, one was able to, unlike the old colonial bungalows, which haven't had a chance. And this building had a good FSI. It was in the heart of the central business district. And one could, you know, recycle it many times. We've had another opportunity at a resort in Coorg, where there was a beautiful hill, you know, near Madikeri, and the hill was completely flattened by the previous owners. And they had already done all the structures of a resort, and that's how we inherited it. And we said, now either we bring the whole thing down, or we actually recycle these buildings. So we took the choice of recycling all the buildings. And then there was inappropriate stuff like this, you know. In the center, you see a curtain wall, glass building, kind of trapping heat in the middle of Coorg, looking over that kind of view with Aluco bond inside and things like that. So, you know, the first reaction is always, you know, get rid of this. But we said, no, we'll actually get rid of the curtain wall. We'll actually put a timber kind of exterior fenestrations, and we'll allow air and light into the space and a good airflow rather than air conditioning the whole thing. And that's what we did. And then we are working with VSLA, Varnav Shashidhar, who's bringing in almost like a forest into the structure, into the restaurant. And she's also actually, all the indigenous species of plants actually were taken out of that hill. So now it's really an exercise of restoring the Kodagu landscape, the lost landscape of the region. So it's really a matter of, you know, restoring the entire space. There was so much concrete on the site, and we said, we've got to kind of do something with this. So all the concrete and the stone waste has been used, and we're creating gabion walls and using for pathways, for flooring, this, that, the other. And that's the vision of that same glass structure, which we are kind of opening up, and some of the views of the interior, and that's going to get completed in the next few months. So that's the structure actually getting complete. So I think these are lessons to learn. You know, we should get inspired by buildings like this, and I think we should build for flexibility. We should build that, you know, we should think of the afterlife of a building. You know, you can have a predetermined function of a building, but the building will probably outlive that function. And you should probably try and look at how new uses and new life can come in over several generations into the structures that we build. So I want to just leave it at that, and with that thought. Thank you.
Thank you, speakers. It was such an eye-opener, the way your designs are very natural, revolving around climate, and how you inculcate elements across India in your application. We are now open to the floor to any questions from the audience. If you have any, please feel to raise your hands.
Hi. Always loved what you guys do. There's so much soul in every space that you all design. My question goes back to the beautiful GreenPark Hotel. I do not understand how you can convince a client who wants to go to China to buy furniture, decor, furnishings from homegrown Indian brands. So what was that process like, if you can walk us through that? And did it work out financially? Were the budgets, because I'd imagine a world of a difference.
Are you saying that it would have been
China's
cheaper?
much cheaper.
Not really.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Not anymore. Yeah.
It's a perception.
I think COVID has also helped us, and I think there are a lot of Indian brands that have come in. I think this was a time with COVID, so shipping, all that became a problem. But I think they were willing to listen to us, and they were willing to kind of expose themselves to what there was out there. And so, yeah, I think if you actually reflect back 10 years ago or a decade back, we were only getting kitchens and wardrobes and all this kind of stuff from Italy. And how that has changed. See how, the whole scenario has changed. So I think there is something to be said about this Make in India. There's something to be said about the number of exciting design studios cropping up in our country, and there's great quality and at a price which is effective. It's not cheaper getting stuff from China. That's complete. Once you add up everything and it comes to your doorstep. And so now I think you got to convince people, and we do that often, is that, actually getting stuff from outside. And listen, we're not playing holier than thou. We do it. I mean, we import stuff from Italy, and not every project can you do this. I'm not kind of saying that we manage to do this on every project, but there are a few projects, and it feels good to be able to source, manufacture, customize everything, and change the direction of thinking on a project. Yeah.
Hello. So good evening, sir. So my question is, like, when we usually work on projects in colleges, so we have this argument with the faculty that this might not work, that might not work. So when we are working on real life projects, do you have these arguments among yourselves? That you might want a different idea, your partner might want a different idea, and you wouldn't like that, they would like it. So usually that happens in our colleges. So
I think Amresh and I have this way of working. It happens, and we have sometimes differing opinions, and either he convinces me or I convince him. And I think you have to go with the spirit of, either you convince me or I convince you.
That's why we also believe in working together as partners. So you can bounce off ideas and critique. So when it goes out there to the clients, it's already been filtered with all the...
So usually in these situations and all, there are a lot of problems and issues, and people tend to go different ways and all that. So...
Sorry, can you...
I think we've been around for long enough, so we've thrashed out all those differences.
It's been more than 25 years now, so...
Thank you, sir.
Our wives are jealous that we are married.
Thank you.
Before starting a project, do you insist your client to follow Vastu? Because I've had projects where, as much as we do not want to, but I've had projects where I've insisted, in case you want to, let's do that first. You can visit a consultant.
That's a good strategy.
But clients, they always come with this attitude, oh no, Vastu, no, nothing, we prefer our style. And some uncle comes in the way and they're like, you know what, you're going to die, you do that. So then we end up almost redesigning the whole project because the layout goes for a toss and everything changes. So is it sort of...
Insist that, if they are inclined at all towards Vastu, and then if they have a Vastu consultant and all that kind of stuff, and there are different degrees of that in different regions of the country. So the Hyderabad ones are different species, and then the Bangalore ones are different species. So you got different Vastu consultant, differing levels of, how stringent they want to be. But I would advise very strongly to get that out of the way on a planned stage. If that is ever going to come up, because invariably it does come up. It invariably does come up. I mean, we've had clients like Kiran Majumdar sir, Shaw, she said, if you even talk about Vastu, you're out of here. Like she didn't want, yeah. So we've had different levels of Vastu, and then, but I think it's important to actually get that aspect out of the way, because unfortunately, someone will say something, to them.
Yeah, but like also, do you personally want to do a project Vastu, even if the client is not insisting it?
You can't survive working in South India or working anywhere in the country if you don't, you should take that as part of the program. Okay, Vastu is there. Now how do you innovate? How do you kind of take it as part of the program? It's just there. Okay, you've got to work with it, you've got to work with it.
It's part of the design brief.
It's their beliefs. You can't accept it, embrace it, and you'll be happier as an architect once you embrace and then you move ahead. But if you keep fighting this whole thing, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yes, makes sense. Thank you.